November 12th, 2022. Putin's invasion of Ukraine has been unsuccessful, but over the last few weeks another invasion has been brewing between the Chinese and the Taiwanese. This Chinese nation is protected and who say also that they will go to war China if China invades them by the US. And on the 19th, China invades. I'm Callum White Donaldson II, and welcome to World War III. If you enjoy this video, then you'll enjoy our sister podcast over on Podbean, World War II Week by Week. We're almost into the second year of that podcast. We've covered Poland, the end of the Spanish Civil War, the battles of Kharkov and Changsha, and the Second Sino-Japanese War. In the future, we will cover the invasions of Pearl Harbor and the war between the Japanese and the Americans, while also covering wars between France and Germany and the US are getting involved there. Tune in on Tuesdays with Callum. Events surrounding the invasion of Ukraine has been very complicated, and at this point in time a major event has just happened in the capture of Kherson by the Ukrainian Sixth Army. This week they push on, capturing Berytsky, Ruska and Lovoda-Shcheskova, forcing the Russian 7th Army back towards the border with Russia. Berytsky near Kharkiv is captured on the 14th, Ruska Lvova on the 16th and Shcheskova today. Meanwhile, on the Donbass front, Ukrainian troops continue to push towards Severodonetsk, reaching Serebushkova, just 16 miles from the city, on the 19th. Attention hasn't been on the Ukrainian war in much of Britain, America, Poland and France in the general public, but on November 13th, British soldier Dylan Hamilton is captured and given a life imprisonment sentence for being a mercenary in the pay of the enemy. This is not actually true, as many soldiers from the UK have gone to volunteer in the Ukrainian army. And this essentially means that he's actually a volunteer, not a mercenary, not actually being paid, in fact. In the UK, there was an outpouring for people to try and help them, and Richard Ford, Lib Dem MP for Tiverton and Honiton, calls for Foreign Minister James Cleverly to put pressure on Putin to release Dylan. Cleverly doesn't do this, as the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, new Prime Minister, only been in the job for a few weeks actually, meets with the Russian Home Secretary Vladimir Kolokoli, who says that he will discuss the matter with Putin. The next time they meet, though, they don't. Before we go any further, I just want to mention that this podcast, if this podcast causes any offence to Ministers of Parliament, Generals, World Leaders, we will take action and delete the podcast and re-record it with names possibly even changed. People in Ukraine and Taiwan can also ask for this podcast to change town names, but as it is fiction, we can actually do this in real life. Moving on now from terms of policy that this podcast has to go through, and on to an event that is our alternative universe's point of war. China's been preparing for war for ages. Back on the 20th, Xi Jinping of China ordered the Eastern Theater's armies, 6th, 9th, 11th and 13th and 21st armies under Lin Keqiang to go to war. These armies are facing the 1st, 2nd and 3rd and 4th armies of Taiwan and 6,000 American soldiers of the Thai Regiment of the American 5th Army. The Taiwan generals we know of are Li Shujingpu and Feng Mohuang, and also Wang Yishenli. Wang Yishenli is the general in army, and he also commands the 1st Army, while the American commander is, as we know, James Eisenhower. On November 10th, all 4 Chinese aircraft carriers launched from Guangchang, with transport ships launching the next day. Tai Si Ching-wen, Taiwan's leader, hears about this and meets with the American ambassador, James T. Moriarty, at 1:30 on November 12th. 2 hours later, he's still in there, while on land anti-tank guns are prepared to bombard enemy ships. A state of emergency is declared at 4 o'clock, as 2 minutes earlier this statement is made by Cui. In 1945, our nation was deprived of valuable resources by the nationalist enemies of the state we are now at war with. These resources are currently still in the nation of Taiwan. My diplomats have been in contact with the rogue state of Taiwan, trying to recover these resources. And back on the 7th, I gave them this ultimatum. If they didn't surrender and give all the territory to us, saving countless lives, by 3 o'clock today, we would be at war. Unfortunately, I can tell you now that this deadline has been passed, and our aircraft is in the air preparing to bombard the Taiwan cities including Taipei, Coruscant, and Taishan. Our armies are ready to unload. People of China, our nation is at war. This message is quickly relayed to the US, where Biden makes a statement saying that as a nation, we made a promise. If such an invasion, such as the current one of China, comes to pass, we will defend them. I renew this statement. I give China till 9 o'clock British time on the 16th to withdraw, or, and we hope to pass this, us and China will be at war. Quickly a war council is convened by 11 o'clock British time in Egypt between Macron, French President, Olaf Scholz, German Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, British Prime Minister, though we don't actually know why he's still there, Giorgia Meloni, Italian Prime Minister, and other main world leaders in Egypt at COP27. They give China the same response, but 2 days longer, on the 18th. At 7:27, the first soldiers of the Chinese armies land at Niusheng, while at 8:19, the 19th also lands there. Quickly they move inland, overwhelming the defences of the 5th, who were totally unprepared, as they expected them to be on the other side of the island, on the west side, instead of the east side. By the end of the 19th, they've captured Hualien, Taoyuan, and Huixinshu, as well as Taipei, the capital. A big blow for the Taiwanese government. Another blow comes on the 16th, as Tai Ching-sheng, the Prime Minister, is killed by a shell and is replaced by Tai Ching-te, her Vice President. Difference is that her first name is Tice with an S and Tai with an AI. And those are not relatives. Her Vice President, who moves the capital to Kaohsiung in the south, a massive city, the 3rd largest, but the 2nd biggest and the biggest have been captured by the Chinese already. On the same day, the 16th, the deadline for the People's Republic to withdraw is passed, and Biden, US President, gives a speech on international radio. As leader of the US, I've been hoping not to get to this situation of a state which we have given our guarantee to, and have stationed soldiers in, is attacked at 3:35 British time, unprovoked. We gave them a warning a few hours later that if they withdrew by earlier today, we wouldn't declare war. But that deadline has passed, and the USA and China are now at war. 2 days earlier, Britain, France, Italy, Germany, Turkey, Japan, and etc. declared war on China on their respective national radios. While Japan, North Korea joins China. North Korea has been preparing for war between Russia and the US during the Cold War and has created atomic bombs. But since then, under the regime of Kim Jong-un, they've been testing sub-bombs in the middle of Japanese territory, though they claim it's still in international waters. The Japanese and North Koreans hate each other. We suspect North Korea or even South Korea, if North Korea invades South Korea again. South Korea isn't involved in the war yet, that they could potentially invade. And on the 18th, there were warnings that Chinese Fifth Army are preparing with 4 of the 8 Korean armies in Seoul, the capital of North Korea, which is only 18 miles from the border with South Korea. That's actually the last action of this week's episode, but not the end of it. As in the chaos of this new war, we will actually report the casualties each week, and here they are. Japan lost 7 aircraft during the bombing raid on the Kanjon, one of the Chinese aircraft carriers. 1,379 soldiers are killed, 517 opposing the landings on the 11th and 9th armies. Another 261 were killed during the defending Taipei, and the rest in the multiple battles across Taiwan. Taiwan doesn't have any tanks in their army at the moment, but 17 ships are sunk, 1 destroyer and 16 cruisers in their navy. They've still got 50 ships though. China, meanwhile, lost 70 aircraft, 29 tanks and 12 ships, including the prize carrier Hunan. China lost 220 in the landings, 319 of the 8th Army, while another 756 on the other multiple ships. Meanwhile, 291 were killed in Taipei, with 617 being killed